Well, to a celebration now in Sulphur Springs, where CHRISTUS Mother Frances hit a 10-year milestone. As KLTV7's April Peardon reports, the hospital continues to expand a partnership with Texas A&M medical students with a goal of securing the future of rural health care.
We're celebrating 10 years of being part of CHRISTUS Health.
A whole decade to which Paul Harvey, the president and CEO of CHRISTUS Mother Frances Hospital in Sulphur Springs, says is a huge milestone in rural Texas.
We have hit some really good marks.
Over the last 10 years, Harvey says procedure volumes, surgeries, and patient visits have more than doubled in Hopkins County.
We've been able to add specialists that people would have to drive to Tyler or to Dallas to see, but now we can take care of the whole body here in Sulphur Springs.
Harvey says rural Texas still needs more medical professionals, and the demand is critical.
We want to continue to do that in providing great access for community care for all the communities that we serve from this hospital.
That's why Harvey says community partners matter, especially those investing in rural care's future, like the Texas A&M partnership that started about 2 years ago.
They felt like Sulphur Springs would be a good target.
Third-year Texas A&M medical student Olivia Norrell of Canton says the deadly 2017 tornado in her hometown pushed her toward rural medicine. And the hands-on program is showing her what it's like to work in a rural hospital.
Really promote students to go into rural areas and rotate with physicians that practice in these areas so we can get a really good grasp of how they practice and what it's like to work every day in this setting.
And hopefully encourages more future doctors to serve smaller communities like Sulphur Springs.
We look forward to the next 10 years and beyond.
April Peardon, KLTV 7 News.
CHRISTUS there in Sulphur Springs hopes to expand that partnership with Texas A&M. So far, 5 students have taken part.